Okay, now that you've reviewed the different types of unemployment, let's go over the causes for all four of those. Remember, frictional and seasonal unemployment are essentially the same, so we'll talk about these two together. These guys are people who are out of work for a very short amount of time, maybe a month or two, maybe 6, 7 months, something like that. But for the most part, they've chosen to be out of work. They've decided to leave one job for another job because they think the next job's going to be better. Or they work in a seasonal job for whatever reason. But again, it's important to remember that that's their own choice. So when we see the rate of frictional or seasonal unemployment go up or down, usually it's due to increased or decreased government policies. We call those government policies a social safety net. And what we mean by that is if someone goes out of work, they have the opportunity to keep on receiving an income. So unemployment insurance, welfare, whatever you want to call it, that's what we're talking about. So a country that has very generous social safety nets, we think of Western Europe, people can sometimes stay unemployed for a very long time. You can see that frictional unemployment or seasonal unemployment is likely to be higher there. A country that does not have as good of a social safety net, perhaps the United States, you would see that number is likely to be lower. We will point out that seasonal unemployment often is more of an individual choice. We can see a situation here where someone is frictionally unemployed because they get let go from a job, maybe as a mechanic at a garage, because the garage itself is failing, maybe through poor management, bad location, whatever. But they're a talented mechanic and they're going to get hired at another garage because overall that industry is healthy and doing well. When we look at the reasons for structural unemployment, your technology has gotten better. So we don't need as many farmers anymore because tractors have replaced people. Well, again, that's a good thing. Maybe education. The book talks about moving from a manufacturing economy, an industrial economy, to a service-based economy. So instead of having factories, you have people who are working in finance or banking or customer service, whatever it might be. Well, again, that's a good thing. That's a positive forward shift. Those types of jobs pay a lot more money. They're much higher valued production. Maybe your jobs have moved to a different country or market. Now that could be a bad thing, but again, when we get into international economics, we see that often that's a good thing. A decline in an industry, that could be a bad one too. Especially if it's because people just don't want your product anymore. Maybe people don't want Japanese cars as much anymore and they want more Korean cars. Who knows? So those last two, they can definitely be bad, but we could qualify that, but we're not really equipped to do that yet since we haven't studied international economics. Okay? It's important to remember that technology, education, growth, development, these are all good things, but people are still losing their jobs perhaps and maybe can't ever find employment again. So we come back to this idea of a social safety net, and that's important for these guys too. Someone who's had their job replaced by a machine, well, they need to be taken care of. But we don't want to go backwards and go, okay, well, we're going to get rid of the machines so that this person can have a job. That would be negative. Cyclical unemployment is the one that we're most concerned about. When we hear politicians talking about fixing unemployment or whatever economic indicators, it's really this one that is the big concern. And that's because it reflects changes in aggregate demand. So since the government feels like it can change aggregate demand or control aggregate demand, Keynesian economics, remember that, they feel like they can actually do something here. These other two, the reason these are circled, remember they're temporary. We don't often see that this is a problem because people have chosen to be unemployed for a short amount of time. Well, the economy's not worried about fixing that. Structural, well, this has occurred because the economy's gotten better. We're not going to make the economy, we're not going to worsen the economy to make these people have jobs. Okay? Cyclical, though, we can do something we feel to change aggregate demand. Therefore, this is a spot to focus our efforts. I will point out that we do have here Net exports can be particularly affected by exchange rate fluctuations, and recently in South Africa, that's pretty obvious. As the rand appreciates, it becomes more and more expensive to buy imported products. So you might see changes in net exports because of that.